Welcome to episode 123 of the Juicebox Podcast. This episode is sponsored today by Dexcom, my absolutely favorite continuous glucose monitor in the whole world, and Omnipod, a tubeless insulin pump like no other. You're going to hear more about both of them a little later in the show, but you can check out myomnipod.com/juicebox or dexcom.com/juicebox if you'd like to find out more. Today's episode is with Katelyn. Katelyn is a legit ballerina. She spins on her toes for a living. And she has type 1 diabetes. She was diagnosed in her late 20s. Little story, little getting to know you, little management stuff. I met Katelyn in New York City. You remember a long time ago when Arden was invited to ring the NASDAQ bell with Dexcom, and Katelyn was there as well. And I don't know, I saw her across the room at lunch afterwards, and she had a great spirit about her, and I asked her to be on the podcast, and here she is. Nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Katelyn?
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, very good, actually. I got the, but the CGM says this, and it's been right all day, and...
I know. She is so lucky to have somebody like you who is keeping tabs. No, seriously, I want you to do mine. Yeah.
Where would you like me to get your A1C to?
I'll send you my share code.
Okay. Well, don't worry.
You can get my Dexcom Clarity share app, and you can follow me too.
You'll enjoy getting a text from me at 2:30 in the morning that wants to move a 120 blood sugar to like 100.
You will hate me if you get my Dexcom Clarity app. You will hate me.
Not at all. I always like the moments when, by the way, we're recording now, so.
Oh, fantastic.
I just, there was this moment the other night where my wife and I were like, do you want to watch like a television show together? And I was like, yeah, sure. I mean, that's not as exciting as what we did as children, but this is fine. Like we'll watch TV once. And my son comes downstairs like 5 minutes before we're going to kind of like, my wife's going to put her laptop away and I'm going to stop cleaning the house and things like that. And my son comes down and says to my wife, hey, can you just shave my head real quick? And my wife's like, yeah, we'll just real quick shave your head. So she disappears upstairs, comes back.
Had he been shaving his head before?
He does.
Or was this like out of the blue?
No, with the buzzer. That's how, I don't think, listen, in fairness, I've never paid for a haircut for the boy, so it's not that bad. Right,
but I didn't know if this was like a regular occurrence or if all of a sudden he's like, hey mom, can you shave my head?
No.
Like, completely random.
Semi-regular, but just, it was like 9:00 and you're like, all right. So she goes and disappears. She does that. She comes back down. She sits down. I see her get this, like, she goes, I wanted to get a drink. And I was like, you know what? I'll get your drink. And I got up and I got her a drink and I came back and we settled in and she's like, how's Arden? I said, oh, she's in bed. Her blood sugar's great. We're ready to go. And my wife picks up the remote for the TiVo and like holds it forward. And then I heard beep, beep. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, how did that happen?
What happened?
I don't know what happens. She's, hormones, liver, body function. I don't know. Her blood sugar started drifting up. And I was like, so I said, hold on. I'm just going to go upstairs and give her some insulin. So I went upstairs. I gave her insulin. I came back down. Now my wife's out back letting the dog out.
Oh, it's one thing after another. It's like a comedy of errors. It never stops. You know what? Life never stops. And it's just, I really realized and as there's, alarms going off outside.
Have you stolen something?
No, not yet. But it never stops. And so you really just have to like constantly ride the wave.
Yeah. And to your point, and the reason I sort of brought it up was it'd be really easy to say, oh God, that thing beeps at the worst times. But my thought was in a 45-minute, situation, my son, my dogs, diabetes, like everything needed something. It's just that the dog doesn't beep at you. So it's, it just looks at you with that sad face. Like, dude, I really got to go to the bathroom. I see you looking chill on the sofa, but I gotta get outside.
Go. I hate to tell you this, but I gotta go.
If you want, I'll start filling the room with some farts to give you the idea, but I think you just want to just let me outside now, So,
oh my gosh.
So at least the Dexcom doesn't emit like a stinky gas to let you know your blood sugar.
Absolutely. It just has this amazing beeping noise.
Yeah, no, that's funny. All right,
and I've got in the habit of, so I eat I try and follow the all natural approach, but I literally just ordered Transcend glucose gel something or other on Amazon, which I haven't tried yet, but I hear it's great. But I usually try and do the holistic, like a little fruit strip or something, and I keep them. Yes, I live in New York.
We should tell people that Katelyn lives in the city.
I live in New York, and that's what it's like all the time. Talk about distractions.
No, I think that's fantastic. Usually it's the dog making noises in the background, so this is much better, actually.
I'm like, what is going on outside right now? And I'm in a good area, too. So, but I try and do like the holistic approach, with these little like fruit strip things, and all natural, whatever. And I know if my Dexcom is waking me up, urgent low, and I know if I eat one, I know I'm going to be up in another, 20 minutes or hour, because I've just dropped right back down, and it's like the quick fix, that gives me like a couple more minutes of sleep, but I know I'm going to be up again. I know. And thankfully it happens, I feel like I get on these trends of it'll happen for like a week or 2 weeks, and then I'll get a break, and then it'll happen again. And
then all of a sudden it stops and starts, and you can't figure out why, or you just have to go with it.
I think I will it myself. If you like think about something so much, then it happens. And I know, like, I get into these patterns where I go to sleep and I'm like, I know I'm going to be up at 3 a.m., with an urgent low, and it happens. Always. I get in these patterns.
I am 100% sure you're not willing your blood sugar around, but
if only we could will it around.
Well, then it would be much easier.
That would be so much easier.
I would also will myself slightly taller, and and a couple other things too. Oh my gosh.
So I have to tell you, I have started, well, not really officially yet, but I have an Omnipod on me right now.
Oh, do you? You using you tried the demo pod?
I have. So my doctor, they do, like, as part of the Omnipod training, I wear it for a week, and it has just saline in it. So I go through the motions of, giving myself my quote-unquote insulin, which is actually saline, and then I give myself the shots, too.
Cool. So you're doing a saline test. That's excellent. Do you like it?
Yeah, I do. It's great.
Katelyn, we haven't introduced you yet, and you're almost done doing.
So sorry.
No, you're almost done doing all the ads for the podcast right now. You've hit on everyone who's going to buy it out of this podcast.
I've had way too much coffee so far today, so that's probably why.
No, it's good. Trust me, people who listen all the time like it when I shut up. Sometimes it's good if you talk.
Oh God.
So you know what? Just real quickly.
Yes.
8 minutes into it, introduce yourself, and then we'll keep talking about the Omnipod.
My name is Katelyn Prominski, and I have...
Katelyn, you faded out when you said I have type 1 diabetes.
I have type 1 diabetes.
There you go. And I met you in Manhattan for when Dexcom did the NASDAQ opening bell. You and Arden were both invited to be there. Yeah, and so while we were talking, I was like, "You should come on the podcast sometime." And
I was like, "Okay,
now here you are, right?" And so I found you really interesting and thought about you for the podcast initially because you are a ballet dancer, and not like you take classes like people pay you.
I am a ballet dancer.
Right. And I've had a number of performers on the podcast in the past, and they're usually younger kids, and they all sort of. They're scared or worried that the director of their play or the director of their recital or whatever is going to see their insulin pump or something and just think of them as not capable or not want beeping during something and they end up sort of either not using an insulin pump because of that or trying to hide it a little bit. And I've definitely wanted to talk to you about it because you handle things a little differently. But first, why don't you tell me a little bit about how old you were when you were diagnosed? And how that happened?
I was 28 when I was diagnosed.
And how old are you now?
Pretty late. I am newly 33.
Okay. So 5 years.
And yes, I just celebrated my 5-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
And so, because of the leap year scenario, it was a Friday the 13th again, which it was on my diagnosis, which you only remember because it's Friday the 13th.
Yeah, no kidding.
So that was kind of fun to revisit that day. I give another 5 years before I get another one.
You get another one.
So it was actually really surprising. It's kind of a long and confusing story, but essentially, nutshell, I was dancing with the Pennsylvania Ballet and in the year 2009, and I got really sick with the swine flu. And ever since then, that was fall of 2009, I got sick. Mm-hmm. And then never really got better. And that summer summer of 2010 is when full-blown diabetes symptoms started happening. I remember I was in Europe with my now husband, but with my boyfriend, and we were hiking, and I remember just being so thirsty, and I remember having to go to the bathroom all of the time and being starving. And, we're sitting here hiking, and I remember him bringing like some bottles of water, and I was like, that's all you're going to bring? Like, that's not going to be enough for me. And so looking back, it's amazing that I can kind of pinpoint when the symptoms started happening, because then those stayed with me, summer of 2010 until January 2012, until I figured out what was actually wrong with me.
And that's crazy. So you went nearly 2 years probably in some throes of diabetes or another before you were actually diagnosed.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. From, they always talk about a honeymoon period, which I totally missed. Mm-hmm. But I'm thinking from summer of 2010, it was full blown. It never let up. It only got worse and worse and worse and worse. I had crazy infections, and I was dancing, and so habitually, this is kind of gross, but habitually I would always get soft corns because of my point shoes, and trying to heal a soft corn with a blood sugar of, probably 500 or 600 doesn't happen. Yeah. And so I got a staph infection, and it was just a nightmare. I was losing crazy amounts of weight. I was, starving and eating a ton, and I remember I would go to the bathroom probably, and I always called it like huge Austin Powers bladders, because you remember when Austin Powers woke up from his time machine, and I can't remember if this was Austin Powers 1 or Austin Powers 2, but he urinates forever, and he stops, and then he starts again, and then he stops, and that's what I literally felt like it was 5 times an hour going to the bathroom.
Yeah, I want to say, as long as we're going to talk about gross stuff, and we've started off with, apparently you kissed a pig and got sick one time, but I don't. Yeah. But my friend,
I have a pet pig. I didn't tell you.
my buddy, before he is type 1, but before he was diagnosed and we were kids, he would stand at a urinal, and it would take so long. Sometimes I'd see him put his head forward and lean on the wall, because he was just like, I guess this isn't going to stop.
It's unbelievable. You're like, aren't I finished? Yeah. Why am I still going?
Right.
Well, I'm really still not finished. Mm-hmm. It's like you're so ready to go that, it's unbelievable how long it actually takes when you are in that state.
So the one question I get that hits me from your story is, how do you go that long without really ending up in DK? Do you think it's just the activity? Were you just moving so much you were probably just keeping yourself just under DKA probably the entire time?
110. That is the only thing that I can think of is what kept me alive. Because I was rehearsing 6 hours a day, plus, a 2-hour ballet class in the morning, or doing a show. And now that I have my nifty Dexcom, well, even before I realized it, but now it's really fun to see, whenever I do a performance, I always drop 100 points after without doing anything. Okay. And it's everything coming down. And I think that is what was happening to me every day, because, here I am starving. I had to go see a nutritionist. Like, it was really crazy. And the nutritionist is saying, oh, well, I think you're filling up on nuts too much. Try and have a breakfast with more carbs. So here I am eating like a giant bowl of either oatmeal or Greek yogurt with, the toppings were the same for the Greek yogurt and the oatmeal, which included strawberries, bananas, a couple spoonfuls of jam, some granola, some nuts. So either way, I was eating either one of the two, plus a bagel with almond butter every morning. And then I was starving by 11. So that was probably 8 o'clock in the morning or 8:30. Starving by 11, trying to gain weight. So then I ate another 2 donuts.
And then your blood sugar, blah, blah. And then this balancing happens. Yeah.
Of course.
It's just back and forth.
But I was like, donuts are fat pills. This will help me. No.
Nothing. No, well, that's fascinating. So when you finally get told you have type 1,
right.
Was your
so
first...
I had been going to the doctor for those 2 years, on and off and on and off. And everybody's saying, oh, you're fine, you're fine. And as dancers, we ignore everything. We will perform with stress fractures, food poisoning. One of my first shows, I had food poisoning and I still performed. Mm-hmm. It was a little tricky with entrances and exits, but it happened. Your body holds it in, if it really has to. So every time I went on stage, it didn't hold it in. But anyways, the doctors are telling me I'm fine. You should be so lucky that you're eating so much and losing weight. Don't worry, you're fine. So I believed them. And I saw myself fading away from a vision that I once was, because I'm pretty outgoing and I couldn't hold a conversation. When meeting new people, I would know that I wanted to say all of these things, but I couldn't articulate it coming out of my mouth. Mm-hmm. It was really bad. I was like, I'm never going to be the person that I once was. And I was coming to terms with that this is the way my life was going to be from now on. Wow. And so finally, I was in DC, which is my home. At this point, I had left Pennsylvania Ballet and had quote unquote retired. I retired in fall of 2011. Okay. And I retired because I didn't enjoy dancing anymore. I was miserable. My body was broken. Looking back, it was the diabetes that was really, beating me down.
I'm not going to lie to you. Basil is snoring in the background and it's messing with my ability to do the ad. This is the 19th time I've tried to record this. I'm going to go one more. Omnipod. It is the insulin pump of choice, in my opinion. No tubes, small, easy to, hide under clothing if you want to. How about no tubes? Did I mention the no tubes part? So you're not connected to something. That means that the pump is on you, but you're not attached to a controller that's, clipped to your belt buckle. Because, it's 2017. The look really is not any longer to have something clipped to your belt. Honestly. Are you a clip to your belt kind of person? Are you a kind of person who wants to jam their insulin pump in their bra? That does not sound like fun. How about somebody who wants to feel plastic tubing, this medical tubing, snaking all through their clothing out to this device? Also does not sound like fun. The Omnipod has none of that. All the Omnipod has is the goodness that you expect with insulin pumping. How about I just watched Arden finish playing in the Little League World Series regional tournament. They placed 5th. She did it wearing an Omnipod, sliding, diving, jumping around, no problems. The other night, she was in the hot tub, Omnipod on, no problems. Swimming with the Omnipod, bathing with the Omnipod, sleeping, softball, running around. No time does she need to be disconnected from her insulin, which I think is insanely important. One of the ways you can make these tiny little adjustments to yourself, keeping your blood sugar right where you want it, is by constantly having access to your insulin. It's important. I don't like disconnecting. Let's go to myomnipod.com/juicebox to find out more. There you can get a free demo pod. There's no obligation, and you can check it out for yourself, see what you think. As most of you know by now, my daughter Arden uses the Dexcom G5 mobile continuous glucose monitoring system that tracks her glucose levels throughout the day and night, notifying her of highs and lows so she can take action. But that's not all it does. Dexcom also has a share feature, so Arden can have up to 5 loved ones, like her mom and I, track her numbers in real time. No matter where Arden is or what she's doing, she always has backup. Now, if you think that's the kind of peace of mind that seems like something you'd like to know more about, I think you should go to dexcom.com/juicebox or click on the link in your show notes. I need you to please keep in mind that CGM-based treatment requires finger sticks for calibration, may result in hypoglycemia if calibration not performed, or symptoms expectations do not match CGM readings. You can always contact Dexcom, toll-free, at 877-339-2664 for detailed indications for use and safety information. Okay, so for Omnipod, you want to go to myomnipod.com/juicebox or click on the link in your show notes. And for Dexcom, it's dexcom.com/juicebox, or again, those links in the show notes.
So I retired and I was on tour with my now husband. He was performing in DC for like 6 weeks. And so I said, okay, I will go to the doctor one more time because I was going to hit the road. I was going to do school online. I was transitioning.
Yeah, changing your life.
I was transitioning into second career. And so I said to myself, let me go to the doctor one more time and try and figure this out, because who knows the next time I'm going to be in DC. And I had spoken with my best friend, and she's not a doctor. She said, I told her all of my symptoms. Katelyn, I think you have diabetes. I said, I think you're nuts. I definitely don't have diabetes. I think I used some other choice words, but nuts will work for today. And so she said, when you go to your doctor's appointment, ask for a full blood panel. I said, what's that? I had no idea. So, and she said, you have to make sure that they check your A1C. So I did. And the doctor called me back. And this was we were in town for 6 weeks. Of course, I waited till the last minute to do the doctor's appointment. And this was Friday the 13th of 2012 that I was sent to an endocrinologist, made an appointment with the endocrinologist because my results came back and my thyroid was off. And as the nurse calls me, she said, I have to give you my results and tell me I needed to go see an endocrinologist because of my thyroid. She goes, I also see, your blood sugar's a little high right here. So you may just want to mention that to the doctor. And I said, okay, sure. So the minute I walked into the endocrinologist's office, they said, oh, so you're here for your diabetes. Oh, no, I'm here for my thyroid. I apparently have a slow thyroid. And they said, okay, well, let's just sit you down. We're just going to test your blood sugar just to see. And it was 500.
I'm sorry, you cut out for a second. What was it?
It was 500 or 600.
Yeah.
I can't exactly because this was, I can't remember.
Really high.
She said, really high.
Yeah.
She said, so it looks like you have diabetes. And I said, well, what do you mean I have diabetes? How do you know? And she said, well, if your blood sugar is over 120, it means you have diabetes.
So
no.
Let me ask you a question. You're 28 years old. When your friend says, hey, I think you might have diabetes, and you kind of adamantly are like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
What was that about? Like, how did that hit you? You didn't want to have it? Was it your age? Was it like, what about it made it unbelievable?
She comes from, and not that she overreacts about anything, but she has a great wealth of knowledge. And she is more, we are like, our mothers met in first grade. So we have spent our entire lives together as sisters more than friends. Right. Even though we are friends. I always ignored things, and she always faced things head on. Mm-hmm. And she's an amazing social worker now, and it all kind of makes sense of our personalities, that these are the careers that we've ended up in. But I thought it was just another thing that she was spouting off to me, and I was like, oh, whatever, I definitely don't have it, you're overreacting.
Do you remember the time you told me I had dengue fever, and I did, like that?
Exactly.
Okay, right.
Exactly. Like, she's WebMD.
Right.
She's WebMD.
But she hit one, though. She must have been thrilled.
She did.
Yeah.
She got a bullseye on that one. But she, and then I remember telling her afterwards that that's what had happened. Mm-hmm. So I spent, after at the doctor, that doctor's office was attached to a hospital. And so I went to the hospital, or the ER. They forced me to go to the ER. And I was supposed to leave on tour that Monday, and I had to stay in DC for another 2 weeks, 3 weeks to figure out what is a carb and what all of that kind of stuff is. I left, actually, interestingly enough, I left the emergency room that night. I probably spent, 8 hours there, but I don't think that they realized I didn't know I had diabetes, and so they let me go. And a doctor from the office called me that night because, every bad thing always happens before a weekend. And she gave me she said, I need you to go to the drugstore and buy a meter. Do you know how to test your blood sugar? And I was like, well, it's been done to me, 5 times already today. I think I can figure it out.
Right.
And so I started a meter on my own, and which, is not difficult. But then she gave me a chart, and she said, if your blood sugar is over 300 for, 3 consecutive readings, you're going to have to start, and I'm picking 3, it was something like that. You're going to have to start insulin shots. And I was like, no, I can't give myself shots. I hate shots, doing shots. And she said, well, then you're going to have to go back to the ER. Like, well, I'm definitely not going back to the ER, so I'll have to start the shots on my own. And they called me a prescription in. It happened the next day. They called me a prescription in. I went over to my uncle's house, and he taught me how to give myself insulin shots because his dog had diabetes.
It's such a strange.
He's a radiologist also, but we go to him for any kind of medical necessity whatsoever. Right. So I started my insulin shots in his kitchen.
That's such an odd path to it. It really is strange.
Yeah.
How soon after the insulin started did you find yourself again? Were you able to have conversations and not just hear something in your head that you wanted to say, but get it out loud? Was it
pretty instantly? Pretty instantly. I remember when I was in the emergency room and they were watching my blood sugar go. I mean, they shot me up with 10 units of Humalog immediately, but just sitting there watching my blood sugar go down, and I remember being starving. At that point, I thought I had like a gluten allergy. So I was like, do you have any gluten-free, anything for me to eat? And they're like, no, we don't. It was just kind of like
all the things that you would kind of in your head over the past 2 years decided were probably the reasons you weren't feeling well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so I just remember being like starving and thirsty in the emergency room. And it took me another 5 months to realize that I wanted to start, 3 to 5 months that I wanted to start performing again.
Okay.
So I was living on the tour, just kind of like trying to figure out diabetes, kind of by myself. And I realized as my blood sugar started getting more regulated, I was like, I'm not finished dancing. And at that point, I was 28. And I was 28 when I just turned 28. Did I tell you 27?
No, 28.
Yeah, 28, sorry. I realized that I couldn't go back to ballet because I had a torn hip, which I still have. But in ballet, the way that you have to manipulate your body, I would have had to have hip surgery. So I'm thinking, well, I'm 28, do my hip surgery, and then it'll take me a year to come back. And I was like, do I really want to come back to ballet when I'm 30 years old? Just because that's old for a dancer. Most dancers retire when they're about 28. I mean, depending on where you are in your career. Certainly people dance when they're 40, but 40 is really, that's the top number.
Okay.
And so my husband was on a tour of a musical, and I think I do musical theater. It looks really fun. I can still dance. I can still perform. So 5 months after my diagnosis, I moved to New York and started doing musical theater. And occasionally I do ballet for musical theater, but it's very different than my body can handle it.
Just short bursts of it.
Yeah, very different than being in a ballet company all of the time.
That's crazy.
So yeah, it's still really fun to do. And I'm glad that I decided to keep on performing.
Well, so you said earlier that you're doing a saline test of an Omnipod right now and getting ready to. Were you using a different pump before that, or is this you going from injections? This is me going from shots to non-shots.
Oh. And it is so easy, and I'm so excited about it. Before I was like, well, I can't wear a pump because of my dancing, and I do, in all of the shows, there's a lot of partnering, so I'm sitting here imagining my tubes popping out and getting tangled and stuck, and a whole myriad of disasters. And so that's why I'm really excited about the Omnipod, because there's no tubes. It's like twice the size of my Dexcom. And I think it's going to be really good. Yeah. I just love, like, because I'm practicing. And so I was out yesterday and I, pumped up my saline to pop in. And it's just so much easier than taking out your little diabetes bag and finding your insulin pen and finding the needle and screwing it all in and finding a shoulder. Like, I am so sick of being on the subway or I went to go see a taping of Kelly, Live with Kelly the other day, and I had to give myself my Lantus, when I was there. And this girl sitting behind was like, oh my gosh, she just gave herself a shot in the arm, as if I had done something horrible. And I was like, I can't deal with this anymore. People think I'm shooting up drugs or something. Like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, well, I guess how many times do you want to look up and say to somebody, hey, no, I have diabetes. Like, you don't want to.
I know.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's funny because at the same time, who cares what they think? And yeah.
Oh, I do not. I mean, that's why I do it right there, because I don't care. And I'm not going to, leave my seat to go to the bathroom to do it in private. Like, absolutely not. This is the way of life. And if I'm at like a fine restaurant, I kind of try and do it in my leg or in my stomach, like a little bit under the table. So I'm not really just whipping it out and doing it in the back of the arm.
Right.
But I don't care. Yeah. I really don't. But it's kind of hard on like a subway, for instance, if I'm having like a situation on the subway that I really need some insulin for, that's quite the balancing act.
Right.
But I'm really excited about just whipping something out dialing it in.
Well, I think what you'll find is maybe a bigger benefit, because you joked earlier that, you like somebody else to take care of your blood sugar for you. But I think what you're going to find is, hold on a second. Let me, my son is texting me and I'm going to tell him, hold on, what we're doing here. Cause
does he want you to shave his head again?
Sarcastically. He's like, do you want to know how good I am at calculus? Which, it means he's going to say, all right, hold on a second. Oh, no. All right, hold on. Yes, we want to know.
Yes, we do. I was not very good at calculus.
I don't know. I said, no. I said, no, now. He goes, no, wait. Go ahead.
No, my brother, who was in high school, so I took calculus online when I was doing online courses for college, and my younger brother had to help me with my calculus. He was in high school at the time.
He's like, oh, you're doing the podcast? I can't wait till another time. And I said, no, me and the person on the show we're waiting. We want to know. Let's go.
I can't live another minute without knowing how good
nothing goes forward until we find this out. Hopefully, it's not this embarrassing score. I got a 63. Here we go. He's typing. I love the three little dots in messaging that just let you know someone's typing.
I know.
It makes it just.
But what about when they type for a really long time and then they disappear?
I don't like that. Also,
and then they type and then you get like one sentence. You're like, what were you actually going to say to me?
Did you know there's an animated GIF that you can send? It's the three dots flashing. And
I love that. I need to send that to my young friend Alex.
I will get it for you and send it to you. It's the first time you use it. It's hilarious.
She teaches me about all things iPhone. And I'm still sporting the iPhone 5. I really just can't.
We needed to get
I'm a late adopter, I guess. Mm-hmm. But she taught me about GIFs yesterday.
Oh, actually. Okay. Well, what I was going to say while he's typing his opus here, I'm like, come on, tell us. What I would say is that once you move to a pump, when you start figuring out how to manipulate your basals and to get better, like to bump a number, that's when you're going to stop getting those lows, because, you're going to say, I'm 120. I really wish I was 90. Instead of bolusing, you can just kind of do a temporary increased basal that'll drift you down. Or
I know.
Or when your blood sugar like sits at 80 and you really wish it would just come up to 90, but you don't want to eat something, you can kind of cut your basal almost off for a half an hour and see if it doesn't drift back up.
I know.
That stuff's going to be great.
And while I feel like that aspect of it is a little bit intimidating, like, the percents, like my educator was talking to me yesterday about Monday, about the percentages. I'm I'm a little nervous about it, but I know that I'll get the hang of it. It's just a different way of thinking. It's the same game. It's like writing with your left hand.
I'm telling you, once you start figuring out how to manipulate the insulin like that, and the pump makes it, the Omni Pump makes it so much simpler because you can give yourself tiny little bumps and start thinking about bumping your Dexcom line around instead of waiting for something for a 180 before you're like, okay, I can bolus for that. Now you can see like a 120 diagonal up and go, I know I can figure out just enough insulin to stop this and just bring it back. I
know.
So it's going to be really exciting for you. Okay, you want the answer?
Yes.
All right, listen, he sounds a little cocky. This is a long text.
Okay.
He's going to kill me for putting this on the podcast. I walked into a quiz day not knowing how to do anything. He went over one problem for 3 separate types of problems we had to do on the quiz. I made sense of it in 15 minutes, and I think I just got 100 on the quiz. Finished first in the class, and it's a class full of just seniors and me. He's an underclassman. So, so he's pretty excited.
I only half understood that, but that sounds awesome.
Sounds like he went into the room not knowing that there was going to be a quiz, and once he found out there was going to be a quiz, he didn't know what they were being quizzed on. He taught himself the whole thing.
He taught himself that one equation?
They went over it a couple times, and he figured it out, and he thinks he
my. Smarty Pants McGee.
Next week he'll be like, I got like a 40 on that test.
We'll see. You have to text me. You have to text me the 3 dots.
He's really good. I'll send you the 3 dots. You'll know it's me.
And tell me what he got.
He's very good at math. That seems to be where he's strongest. So anyway, well, that was a long way around it.
So I want to hear your thoughts, and I feel a little. I know that there's a lot of conflicting theories with sugar surfing. Mm-hmm. And what are your thoughts?
So when about a year ago now, a lot of people were sending me messages. You have to have Dr. Ponder on your show to talk about sugar surfing. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know who he was, but I knew I was getting a lot of correspondence from people, and I thought, well, hey, if that's what people want to hear about, sure. I reached out to the guy. We get it all set up. I know he's talking the first 10 minutes of the podcast, and all I could think is, this is what I do. I don't call it something. I didn't write a book about it. Maybe I should have, but I was like, I don't call it something. I'm like, but this is what I do. I told him, I said, the way I think of it is like I sort of bump and nudge my daughter's Dexcom line around. Like instead of having to make these grand, adjustments, I try to stay. So the way I handled it initially was by squeezing the threshold lines on the Dexcom. So if she's, I think low is 70 and we have high at 130, but I'd like to get high to 120. And so when people hear that, they go, oh, well, doesn't it beep all the time? And I said, well, no, because, excuse me, I might edit that burp out later.
I didn't even hear it. You totally just outed yourself.
I covered my mouth. I think I swallowed it. It was weird. But
I don't know how to burp.
Well,
I don't know how to.
That was odd. Nevertheless, so people are like, it beeps all the time. I'm like, no, it doesn't, because I applied a different thing that I learned in the past. And let me say this to you. The real gift of this podcast for me is that I learn how to do something. I get confident that it's right. I feel good enough to share it. Then I hear back from someone and how it helped them. That motivates me to continue to try to figure out more. And as I'm motivated to try to help other people, the dirty secret is I'm helping myself. And so...
Well, I think we all can help. Helping each other helps ourselves in the end.
It's just incredibly true. And so I had figured out this one thing, which was a saying that my son used to tell me his kindergarten teacher told him, you get what you expect. And it's such a childish notion. But what I learned was if I set my daughter's high threshold at 220, I could keep her blood sugar under 220. And so I moved it to 180 and found that I could keep it under 180. I moved it to 150. I found I could keep it under 150. And then I was like, hey, it seems like no matter where I squeeze this line to, the information I now have inside of me is enough to stay there. So I pushed it down to 130 because, as I tell people all the time, if you react at 130, you can stop something before it gets out of control. If you're waiting until you're 250 to give yourself insulin, you've lost already. You're now caught in the cycle. You're real high. You're going to give yourself a lot of insulin. You're probably not going to have the nerve to give yourself enough insulin. It's going to come down a little, but not enough, because we all know that you need more insulin when you're higher than you do when you're lower, and blah, 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 blah. And then you get caught in this 3-hour cycle. You finally get yourself down to 150. You're feeling like you're winning something, and it's time for lunch. And right. And then because you're starting at 150, it goes back up again, and you get caught in this cycle. And I don't think of it that way. I think of it as bumping the line. Just always bump the line. Nudge it, bump it, keep it in this little space between 70 and 130. And
I was listening to another one of your podcasts, and you were talking about, all of a sudden, like, I'm not going to repeat this properly because it's correct in my brain, but getting it to come out, essentially talking about, like, if your high notification is 180, like, exactly what you were just saying, that you're going to try and stay under 180. But then it was essentially talking about, what is high, your expectations of high. Like, so if you're, usually ranging 200, if you bring it down to 150, but, like, is 150 still that great?
You feel like a 150 is a great success.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, because the doctor tells you, hey, your range is 80 to 180, right? Or if you've got a little kid, they tell you 250 or whatever. So when you get to 180, you're like, oh, well, it's still in range. Meanwhile, it's double what somebody who doesn't have diabetes. Right. And so that when you go to 220, you're like, well, it's only a little above 180. And,
think about it.
And now you're almost tripled what a normal blood sugar is. And so it's a very human thing. You talk yourself into it kind of subconsciously. Hey, this isn't bad. This isn't bad. This isn't bad. But instead, what I'm saying is, without beating yourself up, because that's the other aspect of it. You can't, listen, if I tell you to keep your blood sugar at 100, but no one gives you any of the tools or the ideas to do that, then you're going to be caught in this horribly oppressive loop that is going to be depressing. Don't do that. Don't start the process without the tools. But once you have the tools, stop accepting the higher number. That's, I think, is the goal. The goal is to get the tools and the ideas, have the experiences enough that you understand how the insulin's going to work, and then challenge yourself to bring your blood sugar down to where you want to keep it.
Well, I think it's really important to, know your ratio of your carb to insulin, because know your correct ratio of your carb to insulin.
What if I told you I don't almost even care about that? Would you like to talk about that for a second?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, because I really screwed myself over yesterday. This is why I really bring this up.
Go ahead.
Because I really screwed myself over yesterday because I had a chocolate chip cookie. And I, gave myself it was, the chocolate chip cookie was, I don't know, not that huge, but it was kind of thick. And I think I started off, I was a little high because I was in audition. I think I started off with maybe like 3 units of insulin, which for me, that would be 60 grams of carbs, if we're talking science. And it didn't work. And so then I gave myself probably another I have a half unit pen, so maybe like another 1.5 units of insulin. And that didn't really work. But then I started dropping later. And then I was, I got some little straight lines, straight arrows down. So then I ate the other half of the cookie. And then that started going. I was just on a really bad sugar surfing wave.
You found the roller coaster. You got on the roller coaster.
I was on the roller coaster. I wasn't even on the wave anymore. I was on the roller coaster.
So here's what I do if I'm you.
Yeah.
Okay, right? So I can tell you that right now I feel perfectly comfortable. If Arden is wearing an insulin pump and the infusion set is good, right? So we're dealing on kind of level ground as far as that goes. I would be comfortable giving Arden an unmeasured bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch with whole milk and telling you I wouldn't let her blood sugar get above 120.
Yeah, I don't like you at all.
Right, so...
Or I like you very much, and I want to know how you've done it.
Please tell me why, right. And so here's my questions, right? You said you were a little high when you started eating the cookie. Where was your blood sugar? About?
I can't exactly remember.
No, you don't exactly. 140,
it may be 150, 140, 150, something like that.
Right there. So... Then you worried about the carbs, like you're trying to guess the carbs in the cookie. Meaningless. Have you ever had the cookie in the past? How much insulin does it take the last time? So forget the 3 units you thought.
Right, but I haven't really had. I haven't had one. We can say I haven't had it before.
Fair enough. Okay.
I've had a bite.
So when did you give your insulin in relation to when did you start eating the cookie?
Exactly, right before.
Yeah. So you never had a chance.
Problem number one.
Never had a chance. What you did was you said to the roller coaster conductor, please put me right up on the front of the roller coaster. I want the full experience in this ride. And you never gave yourself a chance. So what I would have done, especially at 150 with a Dexcom, is I would have thought, first of all, how much insulin gets this 150 to 90? I would have taken that number. How much do I think this cookie is? I would have taken that number. I would have combined that and taken that amount of insulin. And then I would have waited until you were diagonal down and moved to about 120 diagonal down, and then I would have been comfortable with you eating the cookie. And then I bet that your blood sugar would have continued to fall to about 90, then the cookie would have hit you and pulled you flat, and you would have been done.
So let's talk about this bowl of Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Go ahead. It's all time. It's all ready. I'm going to repeat, but
it's all timing.
No, it's all timing. Taking care of. I have the concept of type 1 diabetes broken down into about 4 ideas for myself. So, be bold with insulin. Don't be scared of it. No fear.
And you need to make shirts that say that.
I don't have time, Katelyn. I'm very busy. Okay? I'm talking to you on the podcast. And then after this, I have to go over to my son's school and look at his senior thing.
Amazing
vacuum something.
Store.
I got to go over to the grocery store, but I will get around to it. So be bold with insulin. Don't be there. No fear. Don't have any fear. The CGM obviously makes it all much simpler. But you can do it with more testing if you don't have a CGM. But, use the technology you have. I think one big aspect of this is understanding how man-made insulin works in your body. If you don't understand that, you're in trouble. So you need to know, I give myself this much insulin. It's going to take this much time before it affects my blood sugar. I would pre-bolus and do all the time. Sometimes on this podcast live, my daughter will come out of gym class, say to me, hey, my blood sugar's 95, but I'm not going to be sitting and eating for 20 more minutes, but this is when we can talk. And we bolus for food then. Okay? And there I use an extended bolus. But I'll say you need 10 units for lunch. I'll say 10 units, extend that. Because you're 95, I need you moving, but barely moving when you sit down to eat. So let's do 20%. Right. Let's do 20% now or 10% now, and balance that over 30 minutes. So say you do 10%. 1 unit goes in, gets that 95 thinking about moving. About 20 minutes later, as I know when the insulin's going to hit her, now she's just gently starting to drop. And the balance of those other 9 units have been slowly going in over the last 20 minutes. So just as the food hits her, the insulin's going to be kicking in again, and we're all good. So she's dropping while other insulin's beginning to work, while the food starts trying to affect her blood sugar. When you figure out how that insulin works in you, then it's just applying it. I would say that my other concepts are this. If your blood sugar's too high, you used not enough insulin or you mistimed it. And if your blood sugar's too low, you've used too much insulin or you've mistimed it.
Exactly.
It's all the timing of the insulin.
Agreed.
So
agreed.
That's it. So Arden can have a bowl of cereal and it's not a big deal. She eats pizza. We had a problem the other night where she came out of something and her blood sugar jumped on me out of nowhere. It went from like 120 and it was just flying up. And I think it was probably adrenaline. She left a practice or something, or she might have got dehydrated. And at the same time, my wife, we were coming from 2 different directions. My wife ordered Chinese food. And I was like, really? So now I'm cheap. So what I'm really most concerned about is that the Chinese food's going to come, be expensive, and get ruined. So that's my goal. So I got Arden and I said, listen, that Chinese food's going to be here in a half an hour. You're 250 at this point. And I bolused heavily, double what I thought would bring the 250 back to where it belonged, because I wanted that 250 running downhill by the time the Chinese food got there.
Right.
And I got her to like 150 diagonal down in like 25 minutes. So she had way too much insulin going, right?
Right.
But that's not when you stop. That's not, you don't back up then. Then you double down. Then you're like, hey, I'm being ballsy. Let's really be ballsy.
Oh my God, you are so gutsy.
Right,
you gamble?
And no, I can't stand gambling. Once I wanted a slot machine. My wife won 200. We went to the one and only time my wife and I have ever been to a casino. We walked in, we hit $20 because we're so cheap. We got towards the end of the $20. She won $340 in a slot machine. We cashed out and left. We were there for 25 minutes.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. But have you ever, with this method, have you ever had any scary scenarios?
Yeah, once a year-ish, maybe. But the Dexcom's there, right? You're 150 diagonal down. So you can cognitively think about it. She's 250. The 250 was going to take 2 units. She's going to have Chinese food. The Chinese food's going to take 9 units. So even if I give her 4 to get the insulin, to get the blood sugar running downhill, she still needs 8 more units, really. And so don't be a baby now. Now the food's here. Put in the rest of the insulin, right? And if you're scared, let's say it was 8 more units that she needed. If you're scared of that, why don't you put in 6 of them and double her basal rate for 2 hours? So the other 2 are coming in a different way. So you can cancel the temp basal if you need to. Yeah, so like you can kind of cheat. You can almost put 2 of the units on hold and then in 45 minutes go, you know what? She's sitting at like 75 eating Chinese food. Why don't we cancel that temp basal? And you know, it's just, there's ways to manipulate it that when she was first diagnosed, I say that like I have diabetes, but when she was first diagnosed, I didn't understand any of that. And it was so incredibly frustrating. And it made me feel like I was never going to figure it out. But one day I just, I decided not to be scared. And then the next day I figured out this. And then, you figure out pre-bolusing. Then you figure out temp baseling. And then once it all happens, if you're listening now and you're not doing any of these things, it probably sounds like I'm never going to understand all this. But I didn't understand any of it at one point either. And I just think that the most important thing you can do is not think of something that goes the way you don't want it as a mistake. I think you want to think of it as actionable data for later. I did this.
It's learning experience.
Yes, I did this happened. I wish that would have happened. So I probably should have used more or less. Or I should have started 5 minutes sooner.
I love how Arden eats like a normal kid.
Oh my God.
He eats the way I ate she's 13, right?
She is having Nutella on a bagel for lunch today.
Yeah, to me, I don't eat like a normal person. I follow the paleo diet, and a lot of it is because I don't want to say I'm too lazy to figure it out. I'm not lazy, but I essentially know what these non-carb items or carby items are going to do to me. Right. So that's like the easiest way for me to deal with my diabetes.
It's a path of least resistance for you. You're
exactly.
But see, what I would say is this, is using the cookie as an example. You used 3 units, you didn't pre-bolus, and did you get low later? After you, eventually?
I was on a full roller coaster.
So it turns out the 3 units was probably plenty. You just mistimed it. So if you would have taken those 3 units sooner.
Oh, I know. I think that the 3 units was fine because, how many carbs is actually in maybe 60 in a cookie? Like maybe?
Right. And you just have to sort of have the nerve to act in the moment. Like once you said, okay, I'm going up, so I'm going to give myself another unit and a half to try to I'm assuming you were trying to fight off a spike. Knowing that this is probably going to be too much insulin, it's going to cut the top off the spike, but it's going to make me low later. See, then what I would do then is that's where you really lean on the Dexcom. So on that 3-hour line on the Dexcom, when you're looking at the 3-hour graph, right? You start looking at the very end, the last 3 dots on the right side. And when those things start curling up or curling down, it is an indication of what's about to happen, right? So when you saw those 3 dots start to curl down, you probably could have looked at your blood sugar and went, hey, you know what? I got nice and level at 120 here or whatever. I'm pretty happy. But I bet you I need more carbs right now. And then, that's
because I think it was like 184 straight arrow down. And then I was like, is this real? Because sometimes the Dexcom, it'll say it. And then the next reading, it'll be like even or whatever.
Right.
And then so I was like, is this real? So then it went to like 146 straight down.
So what I would say is this.
And then I got 2 arrows down.
Yeah. Here's what I would say about that. Because I know you're feeling like, oh, it's, I happened to me the other day. She's 131 down. And I was like, do we want food here? Or what if I wait, it levels at 130? Like, what if this is just like the insulin just burned really quick for a second and she's going to take a drop and then boom, level out again? I don't want to be like adding insulin. But what I would say is this. I have treated an arrow in the past and been wrong and then had to go back with more insulin. But most of the time, it's pretty doable. Also, in that 180 straight down situation, that's when you pop out your meter and test and find out you're really already 150 really. And that it's trying to catch up, and then you can really trust that arrow. And that's where a tiny bit of, like, you know, I don't know, whatever juice you use or something in a situation like that, where 8 ounces of that juice in an adult, you would have probably just kind of neutered that arrow and you would have leveled off where you wanted to be. I've never said neutered the arrow before, but that's cool. I like that. I really like that. Yeah. And so,
well, then I took a bunch of glucose, because all I had with me were like glucose tabs, and then I had a bunch of glucose tabs, and I'm trying to like talk it through with my husband, and it was just, I mean, whenever I'm in a dangerous, I just keep repeating, I'm in a dangerous situation right now.
And he's thinking, you remember that time we went hiking, she wanted all that water? I should have left her up on that hill.
I know, right?
That girl started peeing a lot. I should have broke up with her probably.
I cannot, that's one of the things I look back and I'm like, I cannot believe he married me because of the craziness. Well,
you were sick for so long and didn't know. And listen, let's be honest, you're young, and I'm assuming he's in musicals, a handsome gentleman, and having an exciting life and everything. And he's like, I somehow hooked up with a dancing girl that pees all the time.
I know. He like lost the lottery.
There were other girls interested. Why did I get
this one? Yeah. No, I mean, he's literally the best. And I ask him sometimes, I'm like, why did you stay with me after my diagnosis? Like, why did you stay with me? And it's as if it's no big deal to him. I mean, you met him. It's as if it's no big deal to him whatsoever. And
he's a good guy.
Matter.
We've brought this up on the show before, especially when people have kids, and I think they worry sometimes, are my children going to find a good mate? Somebody that really cares about them and everything. And I think that it's out there. I think when,
absolutely.
When someone's treating you poorly because you're type 1, that's not the right person.
That's not the right person at all. I had a conversation with this woman, and I was at physical therapy, and this woman saw my Dexcom, so I started talking to her about it. Her son has type 1 diabetes, and he wouldn't wear it. I guess he wore it for a little bit, and then he stopped wearing it. I think he's a freshman in college, and he's like, Mom, what if I'm, kissing a girl and she's like, ooh, what's that? And gets weirded out by it. Yeah. And I'm like, well, then he shouldn't be kissing anybody who doesn't know he has diabetes. And then that's the right. He shouldn't be kissing her anyways because she's not a very nice person.
Yeah, and I think it would be much weirder 10 years from now to explain to her that you've been hiding a serious illness from her.
Oh, can you imagine?
Right.
Can you imagine? Right. I mean, right now, I do very much look a little robotic because I wear them both. I'm wearing my pod and my Dexcom on my upper butt area, lower back area. And it does. I look a little bit like I'm going to have to find, I think, a new pattern for them. But I do look a little robotic. And I can't imagine, A, trying to hide this, or B, not being with somebody who is as secure as I am with it.
Yeah. I would say this. There are times when I hug my daughter, or you reach out for her, something like that, and there's an insulin pump there, the sensor from the Dexcom's there, and you hit it. And in the beginning, it was a little like, oh God, I wish she didn't have to do this, But I don't think of it that way anymore. I really don't feel like that. I just think that it's her situation. It's who she is. It's it's the best thing we have available to help her. And why would we ignore the best thing we have available? It just doesn't.
Oh, and it helps so much. Yeah. It's a life changer. Both of these devices are absolute. Well, I know definitely from the Dexcom it's a complete life changer, and the Omnipod seems like it will be a life changer. But these allow us to live our lives and not have diabetes as the number one thing.
Next week,
we can be Arden, we can be Katelyn.
Absolutely. Be yourself.
Sam.
And
exactly.
To your earlier point about how you feel when your blood sugar's high, be the person who you authentically would be if your body wasn't being manipulated by this man-made insulin that's bringing your blood sugar up and down. If the simple act of having a bite of a cookie wasn't raising your blood sugar, having the thoughts and feelings and reactions that you would have if you weren't. It's such a big deal to get to be yourself. And
absolutely.
if that means you have to have something stuck on your on your belly or on your arm or your leg or your butt or wherever it's FDA approved to be.
So be it. Be it.
Go with it. You know what I mean? Do it works.
And then, going back to your beginning question about, you said you have a lot of young listeners, not young readers, young listeners who, want to be dancers, but are worried about their insulin pump, and getting in the way and not wearing it. It doesn't. You can do whatever you want thanks to these tools.
Yeah. Well,
I could not imagine being in the dance community and not having these tools. The Dexcom has made it so much easier to perform. Yeah. And it's what's keeping me performing is this tool.
And Katelyn, do this for me because we're right up on an hour. So brag for a second. What are some of the shows you've been in?
Okay, well, I danced with the Boston Ballet, Pennsylvania Ballet, and Suzanne Farrell Ballet for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And then I was in the national tour of Flashdance the Musical, Dirty Dancing, the live story on stage, and Little Dancer, Singing in the Rain, lots of stuff. And then I work in the city. I work I work at this place called Ballet Beautiful, which is a fitness type method that gives you a ballet-like body. And we train like all the Victoria's Secret models, lots of actors, lots of fashion people. But what I really love doing is I work with students. So I teach for the Joffrey Ballet Musical Theater program, which my husband helped. He co-directs with his business partner Matthew. And I also am coaching. There's this new web docuseries called Joffrey Elite that's on YouTube that my husband and his business partner have created. And so I work with the Joffrey Elite dancers and coach them on their, they follow 10 dance students from Joffrey Ballet School, and they've named them the group the Joffrey Elite. And so I train them and coach them on their pieces for competitions, and it's so much fun. It just started. They've had 2 episodes out so far, and it comes out every Friday on YouTube.
I just think it's important because, when you're given the advice, it's not, you're not that it would matter one way or the other, but you're not, holed up in a wall, a hole in the wall in New York hoping to make it. Like this is in practice applied ideas.
Yes, absolutely. And it's funny that I was recently on a guesting. I was doing a Nutcracker in Dallas, Texas this past December. And the director of the school, I had never been there before, and a partner brought me there to dance with him. And the director of the school, which I found out he has he has cancer, like stage 4 liver cancer. No, not liver cancer. I can't remember what cancer. Colon cancer or something. He has cancer, and he looks like the healthiest person, and he found out I had diabetes, and he was totally shocked because to him I looked like the perfect picture of health, and I'm smiling and dancing, and he had no idea. So it's just another thing to not let it let your life. Don't let it dictate your life.
I think it's important to say that you are the picture of health. You just have type 1 diabetes too. And also, Katelyn, we have found the title for this show very much by mistake in the very last minute of it. I think I'll be calling this one Katelyn Did a Nutcracker in Dallas. And
I think that's great.
It's a little sexy and weird, and it'll definitely make people wonder what it's about. So,
I did do a Nutcracker in Dallas.
It's much funnier when you say it, but great.
It was so nice to talk to you.
You know what, you too. I really do appreciate you doing this and rescheduling. I know you were really kind and let me reschedule on time, so thank you very, very much.
Thank you for letting me reschedule as well.
Oh, please. What am I going to do? Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Thank you to Omnipod and Dexcom for continuing to support the Juicebox podcast with your ads. You can learn more at myomnipod.com/juicebox or dexcom.com/juicebox. Thanks very much to Katelyn for coming on and sharing her story. We really appreciate it. I will be back next week with another episode of the Juicebox podcast. Oh, and one last thing. I recently found out that the Phoenix Children's Hospital gives a pamphlet to newly diagnosed people with type 1 diabetes, and they've included the Juicebox podcast as a community resource. Thank you very much. If you guys are listening, and I think maybe you are, I really appreciate that. Moreover, I appreciate you guys seeing the value in community and sharing it with your patients. Phoenix Children's Hospital, shout out.